The season keeps on rolling for Syracuse men's lacrosse. After an early scare against Manhattan, the Orange regathered to rally and win. But when a ranked Colgate squad comes to town, do the Orange really have that same leeway? The Connor brothers might have something to say about that. In what'll be a tough test for SU, let's see if they can get back to their standing as a national championship contender. The teams are ready, and so are we. It's Syracuse versus Colgate live on the countdown, starting right now. Welcome inside our new CitrusTV studios, or renovated I should say, alongside Hudson, Ridley, and AJ Myers. I'm Srikar, Rajendran. Fellas, you breathe that new studio air, it gets you pumped up. How are you guys feeling? Vibes are high for me.
I mean, oh my goodness. Look at the lights in here, the sounds, the bells and whistles. It's gorgeous in this room.
I thought I had a good spring break. CitrusTV had a better spring break. It's got that new car smell to it. I'm loving it.
Good break for all of us, but maybe for Syracuse men's lacrosse, it's all about coming out of the break facing Colgate today in about 30 minutes. Fellas, this is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, going into the last game against Manhattan, a little bit of a scare in the first quarter. Syracuse didn't score at all, but they ultimately won the game by a huge margin too, 18-2. But Hudson, I think there's a lesson in there about starting slow.
Yeah, Manhattan last year was Syracuse's biggest win of the season, and when you really think about it, that's a Manhattan team that has only gotten worse. So that first quarter was very scary for a team that doesn't play 60 minutes of lacrosse pretty regularly, and we'll talk about that. But the fact that they outgassed them 18-2 at a certain point, 15 straight goals, I mean, you can't really hate on that.
No, you can't, but I gotta emphasize what you started with. That slow start, it got me nervous. I was at the end of the first quarter, it's 1-0 Manhattan, and the alarm bells are ringing. You're thinking, uh-oh, this team had too long of a spring break. Where's this team that just beat Johns Hopkins? I was concerned with that. That cannot happen today against a sneaky Colgate side, because then I think you'd replicate a similar performance that you had against Harvard. Don't want to do that. You got to get off to a fast start. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you still win 18-2. But I was still a little concerned in that first quarter. But I do understand why. Spring break, you know, long time off.
Everyone's having fun.
Yeah, everyone's having fun. You kick off the rust. That's what they did in that first quarter. But after that, they really turned it on and looked like the Syracuse they've looked like all season long.
I hear you, and I don't think that we should let that start keep us from being somewhat happy about the way Syracuse has performed, because over the last 3 games, you look at those games, Utah, Johns Hopkins, and now Manhattan, Johns Hopkins being the only ranked team there, but a 3-game win streak. AJ, potentially some things to prove, or are you happy with what you're seeing?
No, I'm liking this 3-game win streak that Syracuse is on, Hudson. I think they've started off really well, and I look at last season. Last year, this team generated a 5-game win streak, but then tough teams approached on that schedule. Cornell, Notre Dame, those were 2 stinkers from this team. Now, that was in close succession, those games. This year, they won't have that. All those games are on the weekend, but I like your building momentum. Colgate's a first of many really, really tough tests coming up in this season.
Yeah, no, certainly, and I think the biggest thing to look at too is the goal differential in that span. Plus 29 goal differential for a team that, you know, played against Johns Hopkins, their first real full game that they played, and then dominated Utah outside of the third quarter, dominated Manhattan outside of the first. This shows what this team can be. If they continue with that momentum, Colgate should be a pretty quick game to be over with at a certain point, but the big question is if.
Yes, and if. And I look at Harvard. You know, Harvard, you thought that was going to be a quick game, and it just wasn't. So they got to be leery of that, definitely.
Well, good defense may be the source of the best offense, because, look, this defensive unit prevented any further damage when SU was down 1-0. And also, I mean, this team, when you look at it from a whole perspective, I mean, they're really good on all sides of the ball, but the defensive unit especially been really good. And look, this team also needs to figure out some consistency in that regard, but Manhattan gave a good key in to what that could potentially look like, because Hudson, this defense has really settled into their own.
Well, that's right, Srikar. The Syracuse defense this year has been incredible. And the biggest reason why, as you'll see here, has been something that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. Syracuse won this game 18-2 over Manhattan on Tuesday. This was 4 minutes into a defensive possession, and you'll see the intensity from the long pole, Riley Figueres. causes the ball to be knocked out of the stick, cause turnover, but doesn't stop there. Yard sale on this end, ball goes to the corner, and Michael Grace is chasing it down. Some help defense comes his way. The hustle and intensity was so severe from Syracuse. In the third quarter, up 9, they did not stop, and that is a major reason why this team is so good. It's high motor and intensity, AJ.
Hudson, I think the most important thing you said there, up 9 in the third quarter. It shows the dedication that Gary Gates' defense has, and even when they don't have a big lead, like in this scenario, Nick Kakemo all over that Manhattan attacker. Ball hits the floor, scooped up by Syracuse. At the end of the day, defense in lacrosse is pretty simple. You just got to have that hustle and dedication. That is what Syracuse has had. You can talk about yard sales and stuff like that all you want, but what I've really liked, what I've seen from the Syracuse defense early on in the season, is just the hustle and dedication they have to try and not allow so many goals as they kind of did last year at times.
There's really not much to not like about this Syracuse defense, and Srikar, we know you have more.
AJ, I like what you were saying about hustle and dedication because that definitely translates to the results. Syracuse ranks 4th in Division 1, in goals against per game with just 7.5. That's definitely going to come into play against Colgate because they have a rollicking offense that we're going to cover momentarily. But look, speaking of rollicking offenses, the attack for Syracuse.
Yeah,
look, rollicking, frolicking, whatever you want to use, steamrolling.
One of those has got to be a word.
It has to, but look, one of these players on the attack has really stepped up. Obviously, Finn Thompson went down with an injury before this win streak even happened, so naturally you look at the next man up. How about Trey Deer, fellas? A career-high 4 goals against Manhattan, and he is just rolling through Hudson. He is making his name.
Yeah, Trey Deer was tremendous. That was a career game for Deer, and the thing that impressed me so much about that game was the fact that, he did that while stepping up and working with Joey Spallina in such a way. When you watch the tape, Joey Spallina at X is one of the best players in the country at that spot, but he needs someone on the doorstep to finish that. For a lot of the year, that had been Finn Thompson coming down from the mid-level. Now, you need a guy that's reliable in that spot. Well, Trey Deer proved that he can crank it on the doorstep. Couple more guys, though. Owen Hiltz did not show up in that Manhattan game, but he's 1 point away from 200. Joey Spallina did show up in that Manhattan game, 6 points. He's also 1 point away from 200, so pretty big things on the line today.
I'm going right to that guy in the middle, Owen Hiltz. I love what he did in that Johns Hopkins game when in that fourth quarter, it looked nervy, it was getting close. He came in with 2 big goals. He's got 19 goals on this season. Owen Hiltz is that veteran leader, and in fourth quarters and in big moments, I think Syracuse, they need to look to him because he can always deliver. And he also just kind of feels like a buddy on the team. It's like, oh, we got our old guy Owen Hiltz here. We know he can find goals. I really like what he's done for Gary Gates' group, especially in front of goal, and he's been scoring a lot of great goals.
Well, you can only take so much from just our 3 voices at the desk. When we return on Cuse Countdown, you're going to hear a 4th voice. Our reporter, Josh Richardson, is live from the Dome. Stick with us on Cuse Countdown. Welcome back to Cuse Countdown alongside Hudson, Ridley, and AJ Myers. I'm Srikar Rajendran. Still breaking down Syracuse men's lacrosse versus Colgate, but I mentioned it just a bit earlier. Our 3 voices may not be good enough to basically substantiate or keep you filled throughout this whole game, but we have a reporter live from the Dome, our guy, Josh Richardson. We have questions. He's a guy that at least looks like he has some answers. Josh, hope you're doing well. My question to you regards the turnover battle. What's the margin for SU here? Because Colgate is really adept at causing those takeaways. Is there any leverage or leeway with Syracuse on offense?
think there has to be, Srikar, right? There's absolutely a margin for error for Syracuse, mainly because Colgate is a team that turns defense into offense. You talk about the turnovers, that's the main source of offensive production for the Raiders. However, this team really struggles from the face-off X. Midfield has been a problem all season for Colgate, under 45% on the year on face-offs. But when the offense is on the field, they like to go fast. So there's going to be a lot of goals that get scored in this game between both Syracuse and Colgate. More goals means more face-offs. More face-offs means more opportunities for Johnny Mullen to dominate. He went 14 of 15 against Manhattan earlier this week. So in terms of that, Colgate may force a lot of turnovers defensively, but if they keep scoring goals at a high rate and Syracuse scores goals at a high rate, Johnny Mullen can just play make it, take it, and all it's going to come down to is Syracuse going to convert on their first opportunities?
It's not just dominance on SU's side of the ball, it's also dominance in Colgate's offensive respect. And when they have an offense that's that good, it's kind of tough to play against them because they're also diverse. So with all those options, Josh, who does Syracuse key in on defensively to stop that Colgate attack?
Well, Hudson, I mean, Colgate's the number 18 team in the country for a reason, right? Like, that's a very tall feat for a program like this. So when Colgate is in that situation, there are so many different players that can be good and productive for this team. I have to go with Jack Turner if I have to single out one. This is a guy that's flown under the radar for Colgate all season. He averages 3.5 goals per game. That's 5th in all of college lacrosse. He has 2 teammates that are on the Tewaaraton watch list, and Hunter Druin and Max Yates. Nobody talks about this guy. Liam and Rory Connor, those 2 brothers, you can't stop them. Those are very difficult offensive players to contain, but Jack Turner has been the focal point of this team all season. He's scored 10 goals in his last 2 games. In 7 of his 8 games, he's had multiple goals. So this is a guy that if you can lock him down, everybody else might be able to get shifted around him. This is a guy that you need to stop, you need to contain, and you need to be able to prevent him from doing any more damage than he's already going to do for Syracuse.
Josh, AJ here. I was concerned this morning because you told me you didn't have any breakfast. But Colgate, they've been eating all season long. They've got 6 straight games with 16 or more goals. Are you concerned that SU's defense may have some troubles today?
Well, AJ, I didn't have breakfast. I'm saving up for a big lunch and, a big dinner later on. There's a big slate of March Madness games that I have to eat through. In terms of concern, I'm not really concerned about Syracuse's defense, right? Like, I'm concerned that the Cleveland Cavaliers have lost 4 straight games. That's what I'm concerned about. Syracuse just gave up 2 goals to Manhattan on Tuesday. They've got the 4th lowest scoring defense in all of college lacrosse, giving up like 7 goals per game. This isn't a defense that I'm really worried about. Now, the only time that Syracuse has given up a large number of goals this year, that was against Harvard in that 15-14 loss. I think that game had a lot more to do with this team being on tilt from the Maryland loss, going up 5-0 early on Harvard, and then just kind of overlooking the Crimson the rest of the way. A lot less about Harvard's offense just being so good and so productive. Syracuse also shot themselves in the foot a lot that game. So in an essence like this, Syracuse just needs to convert on offense, and if they convert on offense early, that's going to stop Colgate from doing anything on offense. Syracuse defense might not even have to worry a whole lot this game.
Well, Josh, you say you're going to eat a big lunch, big dinner. What are you thinking? What do you have in mind?
Chicken tenders? From the Dome?
I think Syracuse wins this one about 17-12. That's my prediction, is 17-12.
Well, they're eating good then, huh? They're eating good.
They sure are eating good. You're the man, Josh. Thank you for all your insight. We'll be seeing him shortly after the game on Orange Press Pass. But for Hudson, AJ, and I, we're still at the desk. It's still the countdown. Stick with us because it's time to break down the Red Raiders. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Cuse Countdown. Hudson, Ridley, AJ Myers. I'm Srikar Rajendran. Still breaking down Syracuse men's lacrosse versus Colgate. We talked about the orange win streak, but Colgate just had one snap. They lost 18-17 to Bucknell last Saturday. But before that, on a 5-game win streak, Hudson, how much stock do you put into it?
Well, it was varying degrees of teams, so it's varying degrees of stock that I put into this. I think, the main thing with it is that they beat Harvard in that run by scoring 19 goals against them and proved a lot of dominance throughout that stretch. You look at good programs that they were beating. Loyola is not good anymore, but they thumped Loyola and crushed them. You have teams like Villanova, who was ranked at the time, Albany, who's pretty solid at times, and Lafayette, who they demolished. So yes, that was very, very strong. My issue, though, with them is Bucknell.
Yeah, the Bucknell defeat is interesting, I think, but as you were alluding to, still they had some quality wins in there, and guess who didn't beat Harvard? Syracuse.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely interesting, and to rattle off 5 in a row in D1 level of college lacrosse is not easy. Every weekend in college lacrosse, we see loads of upsets, more than we'll see so far in March Madness. So it is not easy to get on long win streaks, especially at the D1 level. So I think you have to credit the Red Raiders there, even if the quality of teams maybe wasn't the best at times. But as you see, they still have 2 ranked wins, and both of their defeats were against UNC and UVA, 2 really quality ACC sides.
By the way, that Villanova game, too, they absolutely dominated a ranked team, which Villanova probably shouldn't have been ranked, but 16-5 against any ranked team, I don't care who they are.
And wins are wins.
Wins are wins.
And even if we look at that Bucknell game, that was a wild one. I mean, both teams were just trading blows, especially in the final quarter, but eventually the Bison had 2 late goals to pull through. AJ, this team is just in search of a bounce back here. Try to start up the engine again.
Yes, and the most interesting thing I take from the Bucknell loss, is what their head coach Matt Carwick, said after the game. He said it was on him. He said his team was not prepared enough. He didn't prepare his team enough for a tricky Patriot League game. Patriot League is a quality conference in college lacrosse, and he said his team was undisciplined at times and sloppy, and you see that. They gave up, I think they had a 5-goal lead, then it slipped away, then Bucknell had a big lead, then they had to crawl back into it. It was a thrilling game of lacrosse. He wants his team to be more disciplined, and they have been more disciplined. Just look at the win streak they were on. That was a very disciplined Colgate side. Against Syracuse today, of course, they're going to need to be really disciplined and strict on the defensive side. You can't let in 18 goals against Syracuse.
Matt Carwick is the man,
He's
by
awesome.
the way.
If
you ever want to see a lacrosse coach that's like, I want to hang out with that
Yes.
guy, Matt Carwick is the absolute man. I think the thing, too, with that Bucknell game is we don't really know what to expect out of Bucknell's offense game in and game out. Sometimes they're held under 9 goals. Multiple times this year, they put up more than 20, so you don't really know what to get. And in a Colgate game where, they have a Tewarton watch list guy on their defense, you figure that Bucknell offense, who has been hit or miss, would be shut down, and then Michael Meyer goes for 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. Like, there's not a whole lot you can do in that situation. They should not have lost to Bucknell. But I do think it's a little bit of a wake-up call to Colgate, who had steamrolled a lot of teams in a row, and now they're a little bit hungrier against a team that they gave some fits to last year.
Hudson, I hate to exclude you out of this conversation, but AJ, what's the city of brotherly love?
You don't know it, Philadelphia.
I'm here to negotiate.
I'm here to negotiate.
What's
the negotiate?
What if we introduce Hamilton, New York as a new candidate for the city of brotherly love? Because Liam and Rory Connor are monsters on the attack. Obviously, Liam leads the team in points with 41, but Rory, top 10 in the nation in scoring. Look, it's going to be tough to slow them down, and I wish Syracuse the best of luck, Hudson.
No, it really is going to be difficult. I mean, the supporting cast is good, but at the end of the day, you really do have to look at those Connors brothers. Because, what they can do in terms of, the difference of what they're good at, Liam being the passer, 23 assists, Rory the scorer, 24 goals, having that dynamic is really, really special. You don't see that out of brothers a lot. You saw that out of the Kirst brothers, and you saw that out of the Kavanaugh brothers at Notre Dame. Outside of that, this is one of the best brother duos we have seen in a long time, and what they do to fuel the rest of the team has been especially important. These are guys that are number 9 and 10 in points in the country for a reason. They're shifty, they're crafty, especially Liam Connor. Very crafty guy, bounces off of hits, very quick passer.
We need to have a PSA to the world. If you have siblings that are close in age and they would go to college at the same time, they need to play lacrosse. Because anytime there are siblings on the field, they're just so dynamic, and you can tell it. These guys have that relationship. They have, I think, 19 goals that they've either assisted for each other. I think that shows how close they are, and they're siblings. It makes sense, and I'm sure, when they're on the field, one of them gives a little shoulder shrug or something like that, and they know, okay, yep, a behind-the-back pass is coming or something like that. It's something Syracuse is going to have to be very watchful of, because, these Connor brothers have been close to near unstoppable.
To be fair, the trio of Spallina brothers
Yeah,
is a little bit more
hey, we've
tiered.
yet to see that. We've yet to see that.
But that's
in action.
okay. Alex Spallina, very good on the women's lacrosse side of things.
Well,
Very
the
big
Connor brothers
tournament.
obviously a lot more proven in this regard, but you did allude to the supporting cast earlier, and I think you make a great point there. It's not just those two brothers. It's also Hunter Druin, it's Ryan Favaro, Jack Turner is 4th in the nation in scoring. AJ, who are you watching out for specifically?
Yeah, I think the defense, that's what I'm watching out for specifically. I like the attack of this Colgate side, but defensively, I think they're really good. They rank 2nd nationally in caused turnovers. They could really give Syracuse some fits today on the defensive side. And this is a Syracuse offense that we've seen at times. If it doesn't get going right away, it can be kind of a slow start. So that Colgate defense could give Syracuse some fits.
Yeah, Jack Turner is a guy who should be on the Torrington watch list. That's why he's my guy to watch. Leads the team with 26 goals. It's a lot of physicality with him. Downhill dodging, getting to the cup. Like, this is a guy who is muscle, and he picks his spots beautifully. Hunter Druin's a guy who has given SU trouble in the past, especially last year. He was on a tear. Got shut down a little bit in that game against Syracuse, but he has the potential to explode at any point. And then you mentioned the defense with Max Yates. That's a guy who's on the Torrington watch list again, and obviously it's not going to show up on the stat sheet for him all the time, but there are so many facets of Colgate's game that are very, very impressive.
Definitely, and someone who I do want to highlight on the offensive side, Casey Quinson is a freshman. He already has 11 goals. Coach Carwick is really impressed what he's seen from his entire freshman class, but specifically him.
Well, I'm interested that you said the defense was what you're looking out for, because I feel like this entire show, we've been talking about the attack. We've been talking about what this team can do on the offensive side of the ball. So really interesting take there from AJ, but just about 9 minutes or about 8 minutes here to go until game time. We're wrapping up shop here on Cuse Countdown, but stick with us because when we come back, we are going to make our predictions for this one. It should be interesting. We'll see where we fall on the spectrum here, but we'll be right back on Cuse Countdown.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Back on Cuse Countdown one final time. That's Hudson, Ridley, that's AJ Myers. I'm Srikar Rajendran. Now Syracuse has a big test against Colgate coming up shortly here, but head coach Gary Gait actually thinks that the standard of play should be raised a little bit more down the stretch.
You know, we're just trying to put our players in a position to have success and make those plays. So we're trying to build their confidence. We're trying to make sure they understand what's happening and why. It's a work in progress all the time, and you know, we work towards the end of the season. So I'm hoping our best lacrosse comes at the end of the season.
When we look at the rest of the schedule for SU, it's just tough matchup after tough matchup after tough matchup. It's a big 4-game stretch down here, but a litmus test of sorts to see where SU is at, Hudson.
Yeah, figuring that you're playing in the best lacrosse conference in the country, you have 4 games against teams from there, and then all of a sudden your toughest game in the middle of that stretch is a team that's not even in your conference. They play 4 top 10 teams for the rest of the stretch. And Virginia, who really should be a top 10 team if they had all the pieces together. So this is a very, very tough stretch. I think they can beat Notre Dame. I think they can beat Cornell. They can definitely beat Duke. I think North Carolina is going to give them a lot
that
of
momentum,
trouble.
you don't think they can do
North
it?
Carolina, even in the dome, even with momentum, North Carolina
It's gonna be a fun
looks
game.
fantastic right now. I mean, some of the best players in the country. Petramala has been coaching that group on the defensive end to be one of the stoutest defenses
One of the
in the
great
nation.
defensive coaches in the game.
I mean, this is a North Carolina team that is rolling right now.
Well, stand on it, Hudson. Let's see. What is the exact record you want to pick out for this team down the stretch?
I would say down the stretch. Are we including Colgate or no?
Oh, yeah.
We'll
Include it.
Including Colgate, I say this team goes 5-1.
Wow.
5 straight wins and a loss.
Knowing
to North
what you've
Carolina.
seen before with this team.
Yes, knowing what I've seen before with this team, I think the momentum is still there. I think they can carry it through, and I think Duke, they might win by 6 or 7 goals, in my opinion. But North Carolina is just so difficult.
AJ, how
I
about
think
you?
5-1 as well. I think Cornell is going to be the slip up. And what I really like with the way Gary Gate assembled this schedule this year, it was really divided into 2 halves. The spring break after that Johns Hopkins game, that was the end of the first half of the season. First half, you do pretty well. Maryland, that's an acceptable loss. Harvard is not. So that's the bad loss. I think you can get one more bad loss.
Is there really acceptable losses though?
I think Maryland's a good.
Maryland
is
is an acceptable loss.
It could be. It could look a little bit better, but
No
Maryland's
one
a
can
great
beat
team.
Maryland.
That
No
is
one
true.
can
That
beat
is true.
Maryland.
Maryland's a
very
great
That's
team.
an acceptable loss.
But the other thing that was key on you saw on that graphic with the schedule, no midweek games. Last year, Syracuse, I believe it was Notre Dame on the weekend, and then it was Cornell. That was back-to-back losses. That was too quick of a turnaround for this group. Every game is on a weekend. They get a full week's rest, a full week to prepare. I think that's key for Gary Gates' group. If they want to go 6-0, which is going to be an awfully large task, but if you think of it, every team in this ACC gauntlet, they have the same tough schedule. So Syracuse is not the only team to do this.
well, AJ, let's keep it centered. What is your key for this game against Colgate? Because there is a lot riding on this game, especially if you think they could go potentially 5-1 down the stretch.
You got to get off to a great start with a win today against Colgate. In order to do that, you got to get off to a fast start. It's that simple. Do not replicate what we saw against Maryland. I do not want a 1-0 Colgate winning in the first quarter type of performance. You got to get off to a fast start. Put 5-6 goals in the back of the net in that first quarter. Tell Colgate, no, we belong here. We're clearly better than you. We're the best team.
Well, I agree with your fast start. I also agree that they should have a good ending. And I also think they should have a good middle. My key is to play a full 60 minutes of lacrosse today. That is exactly what needs to happen for this team, who rarely does. You saw it against Johns Hopkins. That's what made the team deadly. Virtually every other game outside of Jacksonville, they have not played a full 60 minutes. I need to see it today.
Well, before we get into our predictions for today's game, let's take a look at what happened
I don't
last
wanna
week.
look at it.
I mean, we have to both look at this, but last week
this
it was
is
a
last
clean
week. This is last
sweep.
week.
Okay, Syracuse versus Manhattan. Everyone nailed it. Avin, Nathaniel Cunningham, and Nick Whaley, all of them
That's
right
layup,
on the money.
layup picks.
It is a layup pick. This isn't
shouldn't
as
count.
much of a layup,
Shouldn't
but let's
count.
look at the standings here, AJ.
No.
Oh no, it's not a
my
sight to behold
goodness.
here. Both me and AJ
Well,
at the bottom. Hudson, you're kind of treading water
Hey,
there
that's
at
not
5.
bad.
It's not bad compared to us.
We've
but-
picked like 7 more games than everybody else, though.
No, we
we
have.
need an asterisk. I need an asterisk there. Has 7 more picks than everyone else.
I'm right there with AJ, but let's see if we can right the ship here.
Some people haven't even have a pick yet. That's
Yeah.
not fair.
But 1 and 3. Let's hope we can get it to 2 and 3 potentially. Hudson, I'm going to start with you because us two got some proving to do. But what's your pick for this game?
Josh Richardson early in the show stole my pick. 17-12 Syracuse. I think the offense will overpower, but I also think with those 12 goals, this is a Jimmy McCool prove-it game today. I think he steps up in a major way, has more than 12 saves. He's only had under 50% save percentage once, so of course that would have to mean over 12 saves, but I think he goes 16 saves, 12 goals allowed, and has a really good day.
Look, Colgate's a good side. We've hyped them up all show long. I think the Connor brothers have a big day, but it's not enough to beat Syracuse. I got SU winning 16-10.
Well, before we close out on Cuse Countdown, we asked Josh Richardson this question, and he answered with 17-12 Syracuse. It was a score prediction. But what do you guys think about a lunch or dinner after this?
Oh, okay.
Because
yeah,
now I want an actual answer. I'm kind of hungry.
I
I'm
can do
in.
lunch.
We talked about it earlier. Wingstop, I think that's the place to go. If Syracuse is eating, I think that's the good option. We also heard Chipotle
Yeah,
in the mix there, too. I don't know. That may be bad. I wouldn't want
Either
that before a
way,
game.
for when you watch Orange Press Pass after the game, we'll have full stomachs, and that's
Well,
all
I
that
think
matters.
Syracuse will be eating good as well. I'm going to go 15-12 Syracuse in this one. I think they're going to end up getting it done. Hopefully they get it done because I'm in the gutter here, but thank you for joining us on Cuse Countdown for Hudson, Ridley, and AJ Myers. I'm Srikar Rajendran saying so long and enjoy the game.